Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hi, and welcome back to Journey Forward with Jory Rose. I am so excited to have my guest on today. I have been looking forward to this conversation for a while, and I know it's going to be so inspiring. So I'm really pleased to welcome Ashanti Branch. Ashanti, hello.
Hello, how you doing? So glad
I
to be here
am
with you.
so good, and I am really looking forward to hearing about what you have to share. So just tell our listeners right off at the beginning, who and what you are and what it is that you do.
So my name is Ashanti Branch. I use the pronouns he and him. I am born and raised in Oakland, California. I was raised by a single mother. And I think that, recently I've been telling this story about this growing up phase of my life is that it's still such a huge part of who I am today. Like my journey of growing up was really challenging. And so even though I'm in many ways over it, a lot of ways, things that are happening today are still parts of the building blocks of that growing up. My father died before I was born, so I grew up with this really, I didn't know it was called a father wound back then. I just knew I was really sad. But I was also taught that men in my community are not allowed to be sad. You can't be sad. You can't be afraid. So I grew up with this belief that, wait, what is this I feel then? Because I really want a father, and I don't have one. And these other people have fathers, and I want my father to go take me to go play ball or throw something around or walk to the beach. I don't know, something, right?
Yeah, just be there.
Just be there. And I didn't have it. And so I was like, I'm not supposed to feel sad. So what am I feeling? So I turned everything into anger. So for a lot of my life, I was operating out of a really angry young man. And it caused me to get in so many fights. I think in elementary school, I probably got suspended 20 times. Just a lot of fights. But it wasn't, I could do the work. It wasn't the work. It was just I had this emotional immaturity because I was told that there were certain emotions I couldn't touch. And so since I couldn't touch those emotions, I had to turn them into other things. So that's I'll take a journey really back to my growing up. But where it lands today is I went off to college and became a civil engineer. Then I decided that I wanted to become a teacher. And it was a big battle in my soul about leaving a job that was going to pay me really well because I worked really hard to become an engineer. So then a job that doesn't pay you well at all and has very little respect.
Yeah.
So then it was like, all right, well, I'm going to just follow this little heart thing. And then something said, well, maybe you should start this nonprofit. I'm like, you want me to go? I mean, that's even a further backwards regression in the financial success model that I was trying to create for myself. But I realized ultimately, as I look back today, back to everything that happened, it was all a part of the journey. It was all part of like where I'm going to be today. And I couldn't have planned it. You could never have told me when I was studying so hard to be an engineer, and one day you're going to be running a nonprofit, and every month you got to go hunt for money to pay people. I would have been like, you're tripping,
So you haven't even gotten to the part yet, and I'm going to pause you for a second because I'm really struck by, here's the very thing that I'm so touched by already, is this man that you were growing up, this boy who was told, don't feel.
Yeah.
And yet you've turned a career based on what you felt you had to do.
Yeah. I think
Isn't that so beautiful that, to be able to go from not knowing what to do with your emotions to trusting your body and trusting them so much to allow you the courage to make such a shift in your career and to follow your heart when you had no model for knowing what that even must have looked like on a personal basis, let alone a career path.
Yeah, definitely didn't have any healthy model. I had a lot of models that said, well, if you're mad, you do this. And if you're sad, you just suck it up and then you turn it into anger. And it wasn't until me being a senior in high school when I experienced a fight in my home with my mom and her husband at the time. And I went into a rage. And I went in to try and protect her. I was not strong enough physically to protect her. So I went around the corner to some friend's house who were not on their way to college. And I ended up with a paper bag in my hand with a gun. And I almost threw it all away. I
Wow.
almost threw all that hard work on my way to college. And it wasn't until that moment in that car when I was like just visualizing myself being marched down the steps by police that I realized that, Ashanti, you're sad right now. Like
Hmm.
you're afraid. But what do you do with sadness? What do you do with fear? I don't know how to do it. I don't even know what those. I was told those emotions are not supposed to exist in me. But I was
Right.
afraid that this man I couldn't even protect my mom from. I was sad that I had to trust that he was going to be sharing a room with her and that he would be willing to put his hands on her. And those emotions that day, I realized that because I was shadowing them, I was covering them up, I was ignoring them, repressing them. They were all coming out as anger and as rage.
Yeah.
And once the anger gets to a certain level, there's an explosion happening.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
I think that day it started, but I was still becoming an engineer. I wasn't thinking about being a teacher at that time.
Well,
I was
and civil and engineers tend to not be the most emotionally aware population. So it might have been a safe place to somewhat go to stay away from that. And yet you kept getting this message of pay attention.
pay attention. Yeah. And that's how it happened. I started working and I started tutoring at this learning center. And I was like, what is that feeling? What is that feeling of like this tutoring thing that was calling me into a deeper place? And I'm like, yeah, no, I think I'm gonna quit this tutoring job because this is making me feel something I'm not really trying to feel. You know, I
Yeah.
want to make money because this teaching thing doesn't make money. And I just realized when I made that journey from engineer to teacher, it was like a clear. It was a battle. It was one of my mentors calls it. What she call it? It's like this. It's a conflicting. I don't even know the word for it, but its idea is that I was feeling totally satisfied that I was going to do something that my heart was calling me to do, and I was feeling totally conflicted that I was going to do something that I had to work so hard to avoid, which means a job where I'm barely making enough to live the lifestyle I think I wanted to live.
Right.
And so it was this on one end feeling totally satisfied, and on the other end, often feeling totally shameful, like feeling
Mm.
like, wow, I feel that right now. Man.
Shameful about what?
About like my friends are like saying, hey, I'm going to get married. Can you come to the wedding? And I'm like, where is it? Wow.
Hmm.
I didn't expect that. I think like I worked really hard to like live a lifestyle that I was never going to feel poor again. I
Yeah.
grew up poor. So then when I go to a job where you're barely able to pay all your bills, it was hard. It was like I worked hard in college to be an engineer, and now I'm making barely enough money to pay all my bills. This doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
I feel good about the work I get to do, but I don't feel satisfied in the type of lifestyle I get to live. And so I battled it a lot,
Yeah.
and it was hard. It was a hard journey. It was like a battle because I was enjoying the work, but every end of the month, you know, and teachers, you get paid once a month. So you got to stretch out this check
Right.
for a whole month. And it's not really enough to stretch out for a couple of weeks, but you're trying to make it work. And you're going to school pretending like everything's good in your life, but you got almost no gas in your car. From
So
coming from
those
a career.
emotions are powerful. How did you stick with that trajectory
Oh,
to then
man.
going from teacher to nonprofit? I mean, that's
I don't know. I think deep down I just kept telling myself, like, you got a choice to either live on purpose or to live miserable trying to search for these toys that are going to feel you happiness. I
yeah,
knew
that happiness would have been fleeting. That would have been maybe just momentary happiness.
Yeah. And it was. You know, I think as an engineer, I was happy on payday. I could go out and play and have fun and travel here and there. And I think my journey was something in me was saying, Ashanti, there's more for you. There's more in line for you later, but you're gonna have to make a sacrifice. You're gonna have to sacrifice I already sacrificed. I went to college and I sacrificed my fun in high school and I sacrificed
Yeah.
all these things. And I realized that it was just like, well, everyone's sacrifice is different. And my sacrifice is going to have to be a little bit longer in order to get to a place where I can say, I get to wake up every day and do the work that I feel like I was born to do. And even though at this present moment, you know, we're in this journey of like the organization is growing. So I feel like I'm getting closer and closer to being able to say, now finally, I feel like I'm being able to create a life lifestyle that I want to live. And it took
Yeah.
a while to get here. It took me. This has been. I started teaching in 2002. I started Ever Forward in 2004. So this is 2019. So 15 years of running this organization. It was really, in the beginning, it was just on the side. It was like I was a teacher, but I was doing this other thing on the side. And something was saying, this is something that you're building.
It was a calling. I mean, if it ever felt like a calling, that really feels like it.
Oh man.
So tell me about Ever Forward. How did you come about with this idea, with this organization?
So a first year teacher, right? Remember, I made this transition. I'm like, I already know them. I'm about to make no money, but this is what I really want to be doing. And my first year, I'm doing a horrible job. Like, I'm failing. There's some incredible young men in my class.
What grade were you teaching?
Ninth grade math.
Okay.
Freshman. And there were smart kids in my class, but they were failing. So I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Like, and I never, every once in a while I'll try and blame the students, but deep down I was like taking the blame for myself. Like, what am I doing wrong that I'm not helping these smart kids not pass? Like, what am I missing? And so I invited some young men to lunch, and I said, look, I'll buy you lunch once a week. In exchange for lunch, you teach me how to be a better teacher.
Wow.
Like, here's the exchange.
It's a very humbling offer too. Got to be willing to hear the feedback there. Yeah. So what did they say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They wanted lunch, so they showed up. I think in early days they were like, well, you should like give us no homework. You should like give us no tests. We should just watch movies all the time. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. And I think I was really trying to build a relationship and understand what was in the way. What do I need to do better to reach you, to connect with you, so that when you come to class, you just even do your best. I forget whether you're passed or not. Can you just come here and just give your best? But I saw many of them just coming and not really giving an effort. And I was like,
right.
I'm missing something to inspire or motivate and encourage them. And I don't think that I think that people use these words interchangeably, inspire, motivate. But my job is to hopefully hold up an opportunity for you and say, hey, this can take you to some incredible places. Do you want to go to incredible places? And if you don't, here's some possible other opportunities that it can take you. And where do you want to choose? And how can I support you in this journey? And that's how Ever Forward started. It was these lunchtime meetings that began to build this brotherhood. And absolutely, it was life-changing for me. And it was great to see that these young men began to allow themselves to change their own lives by just being a part of this brotherhood. And I think when they got a space to talk about what they were going through in a healthy way,
yeah,
as opposed to ignoring what they were. And I had forgotten that when I was in middle school and high school, I was doing the same stuff. I had forgotten because I'm an adult now. I got a job. I'm working. Like, I had forgotten that it's not cool in my community to be smart. So if smart's not cool and you want to be cool, then you may act like you're not smart. If you're not an athlete and you don't fit into the ASB student body president kind of catalog, then where do you find your place of fitting in and being noticed or find your value? Being accepted, yeah. Being accepted. And they just began to recognize in that space together, they wanted more. They wanted more out of life. They had dreams, they had goals. And sometimes nobody had just pushed them. Nobody had pushed them hard enough. Did you ever find that no one ever said to them, I believe in you? Yeah. And I think what I still see with some young men who maybe have had lots of people around them tell them they believe in them, you may hear from your parents, but you hear from them since you were 2. So therefore, there's that voice can start sounding like Charlie Brown teacher, right? Right. Whatever. But when you hear somebody else kind of try and pour into you and say, I see something in you. Why you don't see it in yourself? Let me tell you what I see in you. What do you see? And then they'll be like, what do you see? And then I just tell them, like, man, you're incredible. Like, you are smart. Like, you're people like you. And I try to be as authentic as possible to let them know I see something special in you, but you got to see it in yourself, because but until you can see it in yourself, how about you borrow some of my belief in you? Right. Until you can find your own voice. How about you just believe that I see something in you and you can just borrow my belief until you got your own. Yeah. And that's how we try to do it. It's got to start somewhere though. And it's amazing that you provided this really authentic community and conversation to build
and you didn't have the role model with that. And so this sounds like it was as much fulfilling for your soul.
Oh man.
And
Yeah.
what you needed is that young man, that young boy. So it's almost like you talking to them was talking to your own inner child at the same time.
Absolutely. It was what I realized I would have wanted and needed at that time. And I think that teacher in middle school, like I think it was 8th grade, 9th grade, who changed my life, she said to me when I was still in my angry little boy mode, she was like, I know you're sad that your father died before you were born, but life doesn't give you what you want. Life gives you what you get, and you got to make the most out of it. And that sentence was one of my marquee sentences. I tried it with everybody. And for some of them, they would catch a little bit of it. And other ones had to make up new sentences, and I had to make up new moments of inspiration to help them find their voice. And it was beautiful in the way that they're all different and unique. And so one young man is going to be work different from another young man, even though they may have a lot of similar backgrounds. And my work was about building connection for them.
So when you started Ever Forward, what was your vision with it? And what did that vision actually turn into? What is the organization doing now?
Well, my vision was I was just going to buy lunch for these young men. I was going to learn to be a better teacher. And then education was going to be perfect. And then I wouldn't have to do anything else.
Sounds like a great plan, Ashanti.
I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know anything about running a nonprofit. I didn't even know what nonprofits were. I think I was just on a journey of not willing to let students fail my class and it be okay. Mm-hmm. I think maybe once or twice I said to a student who was really driving me up the wall, I was like, look, if you don't want to learn, then go to the back table and sit back there and stop messing with everybody else. And literally 30 seconds after I said it, I'm like, I don't even believe that.
Yeah.
I'm like, you better be doing work back there. You know what I'm saying? Because deep down, you're not allowed to be in my space if you're not going to be a willing participant, right? In this room, we work together, we work hard, and sometimes it's going to be harder than others. And I think that even my job was always trying to pull out of them the best that they could be. And so as Everforward began to grow, I just realized that it was creating this space for these young men. And then after the third year, students, so my classroom was like the hangout spot at lunchtime. I had music, we had snacks all the time. It was just like a fun place.
You're the cool teacher to hang out with.
Well, I was mean, they all said. They thought I was mean. But I was stern. And I was I don't think I was mean, but a lot of people did. Mr. Branch, he mean. I'm like, what are you talking about?
You were firm.
I was super firm.
And you held very clear boundaries, and they needed that.
Very clear. And so what happened was we just started, and so at lunchtime every Thursday, I would have to kick all the students out of my classroom. Now, because it's a young men's circle, young men who were in Everforward were usually in there, and the girls who were in my class, they would have to leave. And they started getting mad at me, like, why you don't have a meeting for us? I'm like, well, I don't know how to tell you about girl stuff. I'll buy you lunch, though. I can buy you lunch. We don't want lunch. We want a club for us. And I was like, well, what am I going to do? I don't know. And I realized that year that we had to do something different. So we started the Young Women's Circle. And so that was back in 2005, 6, right? So we started this Young Women's Circle. A teacher was taking over that. And it just began to grow faster than I could expect. It grew to about 65, 70 members. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I had to afford to buy lunch for all these students that I had made a commitment to. And I was like, oh my goodness, how are we going to do this, So we just began to work together to have fundraisers and whatever. I'm like, hey, we got to figure out how to pay for all this. I'm not an engineer no more, My savings is gone now. So, but I think that what it has grown to today, over the years, we were featured in a documentary called The Mask You Live In, which is about American masculinity. And I left that school, went to a new school. I changed education, my jobs a couple of times. And the documentary is about how this hyper-masculine narrative of being a man in America is really hurting our boys.
It is.
And after that, 2015, that came out of Sundance, it really began to elevate our work in different places around the world. So we have launched a campaign called the 100,000 Mask Challenge. So our goal is to collect 100,000 masks from all over the world. And the mask is a representation of what we let people see about us. If you think about the front of the mask, here's what I let people see. And then the back of the mask are the things I don't let people see, I don't talk about. And what we see in masks, and I actually have some right here. This is from an organization I did a workshop in Chicago. So basically, I'm going to just, the handwriting you can see. So this one is, I'm going to just show you here. So can you see it the right way, that way?
Yeah, I can see that, yep.
Oh, you can only see it. So let me tell you what it says. On the front of the mask, because we're just listening to this.
We'll eventually have it up on YouTube, but for those who right now are just listening, yeah.
All right, well, this is what it's going to say. So the front of the mask is what we let people see, and the back is what we don't. So this one says humor, hope, and happiness are the characteristics that they let people see. And the back of the mask says sadness, guilt, and pain.
Wow.
That's one. This is all young men in the space. So I'm going to read one more, and then
it's so simple and it's so poignant.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, look, that's just 6 words.
Yes,
that they're writing down.
Yeah.
And they just revealed everything about themselves.
So much, and so much more that happens that we can't see with people.
Oh,
we only get to see what they let us see. You know. Here, I'll let you read this one. Can you read this one?
Okay, so the front of the mask, my opinions, anger, and my thoughts. And the back of the mask, things that happen to me in the streets, my opinions of my father. And what's the top one? Decatur?
Yeah, I'm not sure what that means, but that's what it says.
Maybe that's where, is that a city or, yeah, wow.
Sure. But just the idea is that what we've seen in these were all over, we collected over 40,000 masks from 14 countries.
Wow, and how have you gone about getting that? That's incredible.
So after the documentary came out, we started doing workshops around the Bay Area, and something just in me said, keep the masks. And you just workshop with these masks and keep them. I don't know why I'm keeping them. I got masks all over my house, all over the place. And I'm just something saying keep them. I don't know. And then one day, it's kind of like how the journey happens, right? I get an email from an educator somewhere around the country who said that my activity didn't work. And I'm like, what activity are you talking about? They're like, what activity? And they were like, well, we watched the documentary and I did the activity you did with those students in the documentary, and it made the classroom really unsafe. And I'm like, well, I didn't train nobody to do no activity. I said, the clip in the documentary is only 3 minutes. I was with those young men for over an hour and a half, and I've been working with them for several months. So I hope you didn't try and do what you saw in 3 minutes and try and take that into your classroom in a really unsafe way, because you're telling people to reveal things, but I don't just tell you to reveal. I take you through a process.
You got to be able to process it and be able to create that space that's not going to make it more threatening to be vulnerable, because otherwise you're going to completely defeat the purpose if now they're more threatened by being vulnerable than they are accepted or safe.
Absolutely. And then on top of that, I was like, well, if this one person was willing to blame me, then maybe other people are blaming me in silence. At least this person blamed me out loud. So I said, well, look, we're going to tell people how to do it, the activity, and we're going to give it away. So we just started giving it away. We created it's a couple of versions of this card that we created. And because originally it was on pieces of paper for us, but we said, well, look, how do we give it away? How do we give it away to people all around the country and the world? And that's how it came about. We never had a goal before. The 100,000 masks came out because I told my team, well, we're going to do this thing, and it's going to be called the Million Mask Movement. And they were like, 1 million? How are we going to collect 1 million masks? I'm like, that's a beautiful number, isn't it? It's like MMM, Million Mask Movement. Look at that. And they were like all nervous. And I was like, all right, let me go think of a new name, right? So we call it the 100,000 Mask Challenge. And so eventually, once we hit 100,000, we make changes to the new name of the Million Mask Movement. But what we've been seeing is that wherever we are, whether we're talking to teachers, parents, social workers, talking to corporate people, we're talking to teenagers, middle schoolers, it's the same stuff. More sophisticated language, but the same stuff. It's like, here's a part of myself that I let people see, and here's the things I don't get to talk about. And what we've been able to do in those workshops is let young people and the older people just become more alive and realize that maybe you just haven't been thinking about who are the people that you can be your real self with. Maybe you spend so much time with people who you have to keep masks on with. You never spend enough time with people who would accept you for just who you are.
Where you can take them off.
Where you can just feel like I can be myself. And that's how it's
it's just so powerful. And, it's something tangible too. You know, as a therapist, I'm not the kind of therapist who sits and processes a lot with my clients, because I think we can process all we want, but we also need to take action, right? We need tools. We need to know what to do when we're feeling that overwhelm or we're feeling disconnected. And I love that this is something that it's an action item to be able to name these things. And, you know, what's fascinating to me is even just what we know from neuroscience, by naming what we're feeling diminishes that sense of overwhelm.
Nice.
Right? So it's just our emotional alarm on our brain is going to calm down. We can just name it and experience it.
Yeah.
Because by giving it space to exist, it just is. It's no longer this big scary thing we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think what we need more schools who get that. A lot of times schools are like, well, all of our kids are doing fine, so we don't need anything like that. And the sad part is that they wait for a crisis to happen. They wait for some kid who's been doing great, who's playing sports, to then do something drastic, or some kid who's just been quietly in quiet desperation, like not sharing what's going on. And then you're like, well, now we're going to do something. Now we're going to try and bring all these people in to try and support students. And I think that that's where we lose. And it's such as a practitioner now who has to be like an outsider going into schools, I'm like a salesman. And it's sometimes frustrating because I don't want to be in a sales role. But ultimately, I need to help educators. I need to paint the picture for educators of what they could be doing to provide a deeper level of support for their students that they probably not doing, you know?
Well, and it's fascinating because I imagine you probably come up a lot of resistance in different settings, thinking, oh, my community doesn't need this. And years ago, when I was doing my internship hours, I was a school counselor, and I also brought mindfulness into an independent private school in the Bay Area. This was a $25,000 a year tuition per child.
Yes.
And on average. And that was the year that there was a documentary that came out about the success of mindfulness in schools that was highlighting some inner city San Francisco schools that had used mindfulness, and, you know, the truancy rates decreased and the grades went up and the graduation rates increased. And a couple of parents who knew about the organization, who was part of the documentary, said, oh, you should hold a night at the school that I'm at, and you should show it and talk about mindfulness in schools. And I'm like, there is no way, because that's not the conversation I want to have, because in this school, they didn't want to compare against an inner city school. And my whole thing was, look, suffering has no hierarchy.
Right.
You know, yes, the issues might be different, what they're experiencing, but the emotions are all the same. And I didn't want to put myself in a position to have to defend against emotions.
Yeah.
And, you know, because whether you're in poverty or whether you're in wealth, whether you're in inner city or whether you're in an affluent neighborhood, you still all have emotions.
That's right.
And, you know, I was a little bit struck. I was feeling some emotion coming up in myself when you were first sharing your story about not growing up with a dad. And I didn't have a dad either. And well, I did. And my parents divorced when I was 3, and my dad committed suicide when I was 10. And so in all intents and purposes, I felt like I never had a dad. And the shame of not having a dad, and the embarrassment of never wanting to say he committed suicide, and not knowing what to do on Father's Day or the father-daughter dance, and feeling embarrassed at Girl Scouts because I couldn't go to that activity. Like, we all have a story, right? Yeah. And I was feeling you so deeply because I know what that feeling is. And very different circumstances, but our experiences, our emotions are the same in many ways. And I remember even when I got married, I'm now since divorced, but when I got married, feeling like when my daughter was a baby, really confused, like, I don't get it. What's a dad supposed to do? You don't need dads. And now here I am divorced, and I've got almost 80% custody of my kids, and it feels like, you know, I now know the huge value of dads, and he's also not a super active part of their lives. And so it's just fascinating when I don't know what I'm trying to say other than the emotions are all there.
Yeah. And thank you. I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think what we often see with people who we meet every day, like we operate based on, we meet them, they meet us. If it's a first time meeting and we're being who they think, well, we're being who we think they need us to be. And they're
Right.
being who, whether we're at a barista at a cafe or you're at a business meeting with some new clients, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to be this person. And how often do we end up seeing like, I'm missing something, like I'm missing, or feeling like we're feeling like in a judging space. We're like, why is this person so happy? It's like, it's 7 o'clock in the morning. Just give me my coffee, please. Can I just,
Right.
why are you so juiced, right? Like I haven't had my coffee yet, so slow down, right?
Yeah.
How many things that person may have had to push aside to come in that day, right? And had to like try and do their best to cheer somebody up who comes to the register, believing that the reason that they're grumpy is because they haven't drunk this stuff, right?
Right.
And then they're doing their best, and then they mess up, and then you're like, you messed up, you gave me too many pumps or whatever. Like all the things that happen when we approach people that we don't even know, and how we sometimes put our stuff on them.
Mm-hmm.
And because we're human, and we sometimes don't think 3 steps ahead, right? And so we're like,
Yeah.
oh, I just hurt somebody's feelings. I was just trying to be funny. Oh, I was just trying to get what I needed. And we oftentimes in those connections, we realize our mask was engaged. And sometimes hopefully we have the courage to say, my bad. I apologize, right? Hopefully people have that courage. And sometimes we see people who just could care less, and they say, well, your job is to make my drink right. You made it wrong. So therefore I have the right to talk to you however I want to talk to you. And sometimes I'm in a place, I'm just like, I just want to say something, I just want to be like, whatever. But I say, okay, Shanti, it's not your business. Mind your business. Don't mind your. But then you want to defend that person. So all the things that we do is in our own mass world that we have to always make some decisions,
Yeah. There was a quote that I came across years ago that really changed my life.
Yeah.
And it's in a 9-in quote. And it's the quote that there's 2 of her quotes that actually really changed my life. This one is, and the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was greater than the risk it took to blossom.
Nice.
And that was when I realized I had to make some major change in my life, because it was harder to pretend than to just have the courage to be, right?
Yeah.
Staying stuck was easy for a while until I could no longer stay stuck anymore. And part of that had to take that mask off of, letting my vulnerability come out, letting all the fears arise, and be able to say, yeah, that's what's here. And I don't need to let it rule me anymore. I don't need to let it take over.
Yeah, that's powerful. So I've been thinking about this lately because, I present a lot around the country and different parts of the world. And I think that, when I first started realizing that there was an emotional part to me where I was willing to let a tear fall, or willing to, when you're on stage, you got to keep it together. So you're trying to keep it together, but also like, how can I let myself feel a little bit here without losing control? And I think I was like, over the last couple of months, or maybe I was like, I think I've cried more or had tears fall more in the last, say, 3 years since I've been really pushing hard at this work than probably in the first 40 years of my life.
Yeah.
Eliminating the baby time, right? Like consciousness, right? About like crying's not okay. I turned the crying off. And I think that until I got to a place as an adult where this is the work I do, and I'm always like thinking about it, but I'm always like, I'm feeling this right now, and I'm okay letting people see this right now. Like I'm like, man, it's real. Like it's real.
It's real.
It's real.
And it becomes harder to suppress it than it does to let it out.
It sure does.
A couple weeks ago, I flew down to LA, and I was on one of the morning news.
Nice.
Which was a fun first time on live TV experience. But I was talking about how parents can talk to their kids around what I've been calling disaster anxiety.
Okay.
And around specifically with the fires all over California as a couple weeks ago.
Hoo-wee.
And, it's really scary.
Yeah.
And it's so easy for a parent to say to their kid, oh, don't worry, it's going to be okay. And it strikes me as such a disservice, because we're essentially telling kids, you're feeling this emotion, shut it down. And that's so hard, because the child, and even adults, right? This isn't just parent-child, this is whomever, right? The last thing someone's going to do when you say don't worry is to actually not worry. And then it becomes really confusing, because they're feeling this emotion, anxiety, fear, and the person they're supposed to trust most, their parent, their primary caregiver, their partner, whomever, says, don't trust what you're feeling, trust my words.
Yeah.
And then it's like this cognitive dissonance. If I feel one thing, but I'm being told another, or I think another, who do I know how to trust? And I think that contributes to our culture of not allowing our emotions.
That's right.
And there's such this fear that if we allow these emotions to come out, they're just going to get bigger and bigger. And it's so counterintuitive. When we acknowledge them, they get smaller.
And I think the same thing you're saying, like what people are taught when they're younger. I think I see it with young boys at a grocery store, right? I think in the parents' mind, I just want this kid to stop crying. So I need to say something that's going to get them to stop crying. And so how can I insult you the most? How can I shame you the most about your crying? I can say, stop crying like a little baby. Okay, that can work. But oftentimes I hear with fathers and sons and mothers and sons, especially when mothers are trying to do the role of the raising their son themselves, stop crying like a little girl.
Yeah.
So if you want to shame a boy who feels he's a boy, who identifies as a boy, and to tell him that crying makes him like a girl, totally helps him to disconnect emotion from his being of a human. And therefore, when you start to shut down that part of your emotion that you're not allowed to cry, I think it's absolutely devastating. And I heard this man the other day say he was raised by his mom only, and his mom was taught that she couldn't mother him too much. So she really tried to play both roles by toughening him up, by never letting him feel, by trying to make him everything she was, opposite of it.
Yeah.
I mean, shut down any feelings, shut down any emotions. Never, you're not sad, you're not afraid, suck it up. And those things turn him into a monster, he said, a monster. Because then if you don't have any feelings of sadness or fear or shame or whatever, you're just always, what do? You're always supposed to be in aggressive mode.
Right.
You're not allowed to
because that's what's acceptable for boys and men to express.
That's right. Or just be quiet. Shut the emotion down. So I go to silence. And therefore, we never know what men think because they don't talk. They've been taught that what you feel doesn't really matter anyway. So better just not talk about it,
Yeah, it's, there are studies done that talk about how boys and girls under the age of 5 have the same level of emotional expression. And it's shut down in boys by age 4 and 5.
Yeah.
And it's shut down in girls by around age 12, where girls, they're taught, be nice. They're taught, don't say what you really think because that won't get you liked. So the rhetoric for girls becomes, do you want to know what I think or do you want to know what I really think? Because I'm not allowed to say what I really think because it's not acceptable.
Right.
So again, that's the mask that girls hide behind. And when I was a school counselor, I used to do 4th grade groups for girls on relational aggression. And because the mean girl behavior, it looks very different than the boy behavior, but it's still there. Oh, let me tell you, it's still there.
Oh, man. And as a vice principal at a middle school, I would see stuff and I'm like, why are you talking to her like that? Why are you talking to him like that? What's going on, right? So those ages where everyone's testing out their abilities, their who am I, right? And all these ways of being where you just see some it's immaturity. And unfortunately, the stuff I see in middle school as a vice principal, I promise you I see some of that stuff today with adults. In this suspended adolescence, and you're like, why are you talking to people like that? Like that doesn't make any sense. Like you should be more mature by now that you're not still operating by an uncontrollable rage or emotion around. Now, as a person who
age does not determine emotional maturity.
Very true.
Quote
Very
that
true.
one.
I will 100% agree. Absolutely. There's a new book by Mark Brackett from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, and it's called It's called Permission to Feel. And I've been getting into it, and it's been really meaningful around this idea of like our emotional well-being, right? This idea that if we repress those emotions, right, it's like a bill that will eventually come due. And the question is, you're going to take care of it when there's no interest left on the bill, or when it is now in some collections and now it's creating crisis for you and your family. Yeah. And I think that was such a really cool way of talking about it. Like, oh yeah, I've had a few of those.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
So let me ask you. I'm so inspired by your ability to feel your emotions so publicly when you're on a stage, and even a few moments ago with me, like I really honor that. Where did you learn that was a way that you could express yourself? Did some particular person inspire you to say, Ashanti, you can feel, and you're still a man, and you're still, a confident, secure, successful man, even when you feel and express your emotions? Or did you just have to say to yourself, I can just do this?
I think when I say in the last 5 years, because when I get on stage, when I'm working with a group of students or young men, I just speak my truth with them, So I realized early on that if I was going to get them to speak some of their truth, I had to tell some of my truth. I couldn't just come to school like, oh, I'm the perfect teacher because I got a job and I got money and I blah, blah, blah. So therefore, I'm here to help you, kid, be better. I realized that what I was realizing ever forward, what I learned from them is that most of them had no connections with any adults, definitely any teachers. So teachers were just these people who were like perfect in their subject and had no human connection any other way. So therefore, they would always project all their stuff onto the students. And so as a teacher, I realized one day, I think how it happened, like in the early days, a student came in and said, hey, Mr. Branch, how you doing today? How was your weekend? And I was like, oh, it's fine. So what'd you do? And I'm like, you're asking a lot of questions, right? Now, I didn't really do nothing that weekend. It wasn't like I was hiding or anything, but I was like, why? I was kind of curious why the kid was asking so many questions about my weekend. And it's like, well, I just want to know, you never talk about your weekend and what you do. So I just wanted to know what you do. I'll tell you what I did. And I remember just having this student who was like trying to build a connection.
He was showing interest. He was trying to connect.
Absolutely. And I realized that some students would, if you weren't at school, that kid would make up homework to do. And some students, no matter what you did, they would do no homework if they had no relationship with you. And so it's like, I thought that, okay, so this is a part of my learning as a teacher that I need to realize that if I care more about the subject that I teach than the subjects who I teach, then I'm probably going to have a disconnect. And that's how it happened. It began me as a teacher coming in. And some days, you know what? I knew that me on a bad day would be better than some subs on a perfect day. So my job was to come in. And I'm like, hey, folks, having a rough morning. I need your help. I'm not feeling well. But I really wanted to be here because I know we got a lot of stuff coming up. So I just need you to work with me today. I just don't want to be arguing with nobody. And I would just be totally honest with them, right? And, only one or two would be like, I could care less. But for the most part, they would be like, okay, we're going to give him some space. He's giving us some space. We're trying to work it out. But I think that I realized that it was about building those relationships. And then when I began to get on stage, I think it happened once on accident. I didn't even plan it. I was just saying, I was raised by a single mother, and my father died before I was born. And I think it was just one day it just happened. And I was like, uh-oh. And I was feeling my eyes welling up. And I'm like, whoa. And I just
alarms blaring off inside your brain. What do I do?
You're on stage. And I was just like, I just took a deep breath. I just took a deep breath right there. I said, can you all take a deep breath with me? And I just said, take a deep breath with me, please. And they took a deep breath. And I said, I didn't expect that to hit me like that. And I think it was that moment where I realized, and you could just see the, the eyes of the people in the audience just really like some empathy.
Yeah.
Right? Because I didn't plan that. I wasn't planning to have a moment, but when I recognized that the stage didn't burn up, that they didn't walk out the room, and then once I kind of able to moved back in, I mean, it wasn't that long. It was like 20 seconds, 30 seconds, but it was just a way of like, I'm human.
What a way
And,
for you to embrace authenticity.
oh man, it was scary. It was definitely scary.
So you're like, okay, so I'm removing the mask of presenter at the moment, and I'm showing up as the little boy behind it.
And I think, and also how do you give people in the audience permission? Because I'm going to ask you to fill out one of these masks. I want you to write, I'm going to have everyone fill out this card in this workshop eventually. So I better be willing to let you know that it's okay to do that. I better find a way to like connect with you in a way that's human, as opposed to me here as some person who read a bunch of books and I think I know some stuff about emotions and feelings. Like I'm not here to try to prove to you what I think I know about some stuff I read. I'm talking about what I feel, what I felt, what I constantly have to battle through. And I think when I can get real with audience like that, especially with teachers, because I was a teacher not only, and I raised some of my godsons and I raised my siblings and all these things I experienced, I just try and be human with them. So because I want you to be more human with me. So when we go to this next phase, and that's how it's began to grow, and it's been beautiful just watching the journey of it. You know,
Well,
like I said,
you sent me over a couple weeks ago the link of the masks of just the video of seeing those images of what's written on those cards, and oh man, it's just so powerful. And you know, when it shows the age of the person from quite young to, you know, very mature adult age. Yeah. And you wouldn't necessarily know the age difference just by looking at the card.
That's right. That's right.
It's so powerful. What do you do for a follow-up after they do the cards? Like so let's just say if someone's listening right now, and obviously I know you do a whole presentation, but if someone's like, wow, I'm going to write this down, what is on the front of my mask, what's underneath it? Is there any kind of next piece that you will guide the process of whatever emotions are coming up, or kind of a what's next with that?
Yeah, so we created an online version now. So we actually, people don't have to order cards from us. They can go
great.
to, the website is 100K masks. So it stands for 100,000 masks, 100kmasks.com. And so they can draw a mask online. And this is a beta version. So we just launched it a month ago or so, and they can draw their mask as a digital drawing tool. Then they can submit it. And they write the words on the front and the back, these 6 words, like things that they let people see. On the back, things they normally don't let people see. And what our vision is, like for the next couple of versions, well, the next version will be a way for them to connect in the community. Right now, we're just testing out, making sure we get the drawing tool right.
Right.
But what we're envisioning is that people who want to be a part of the community, they can give us their email and we'll reach out to them when the community is created. Because I think that what people sometimes want to recognize is that what I believe really helps is when you talk about it, like you might just get a chance to talk about it and let go of some of it. I get a chance to be more connected to myself. And so they can go in there and they can see other masks. They can put in like, well, I use the word happy on the front. Let me see what other people who use the word happy, what their mask looks like, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I use the word maybe sad on the back. I'll type in sad and see how many other people use the word sad. And then they can begin, even just with the version we have right now, they can just see things that, what are other 14-year-olds in this collection saying? What are other 48-year-olds saying?
So like it sounds like almost creating a gallery.
Creating a gallery so that people can recognize they're not alone. I think that just being able to be in that moment of like, wow, there's other people going through similar stuff. Because if you totally believe that no one would understand you or get you, or that you are the only one, I think that idea of quiet desperation is dangerous for people.
Oh, it is. Well, and we know, in the work of self-compassion, that common humanity is one of the 3 components that define self-compassion practice. And the way that I define common humanity is the idea of you are unique, but your problems are not. And we tend to believe that when we're stuck in something that no one else is going to ever get us, that we're the only ones who've ever experienced this. And while you may be the only one who's ever experienced your details, you're not the only one who's ever experienced this emotion or this feeling. And when we get really stuck in rumination, we tend to isolate. Yeah. And that's the hard part, because the more isolated we become, the more we spin deeper in whatever it is we're stuck in. Yeah. But to have the vulnerability and courage to say, yeah, this is where I'm hurting right now, that's going to draw a connection, which is going to help you feel alleviated a little bit of, oh wait, I'm nothing is wrong with me for feeling this.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. And I think that the difference between asking a student, and that's a great point, like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you, right? As opposed to, like, what has happened to you? What has happened to you that has brought you to this moment of always being angry, right? As opposed to, like, there's something wrong with you and you have, there's nothing, that you're what you are feeling, what you're going through is wrong, as opposed to
Yes.
some situations that have created this.
Isn't it amazing how powerful language is? Just the subtlety of one or two words just changes everything.
Oh man.
It made me think of when I do a lot of parenting work with my clients, and one of the things that I try to help parents do is shift their form of discipline, because we tend to react to behavior, and we tend to react to negative behavior. And I always tell parents to pause on the negative behavior and come around to have curiosity and compassion for the emotion driving the behavior. And most often, I think the emotion driving the behavior is we need to be seen, heard, and validated. And when we're not seen, heard, or validated, we act out for attention. And when we are seen, heard, and validated, then the negative behavior goes down by itself.
That's so huge.
It's so huge, and it feels so foreign to parents because they're like, but my kid was acting out, they need a consequence. Like, no, not always. That's not really what they need, because I guarantee that consequence is not going to prevent that negative behavior from happening again. Putting them on a timeout is not going to change and reform them. But being able to say to them, wow, you're really struggling right now. I'm wondering what's going on.
Yeah.
Different question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder, like, with parents, even with teachers, I think helping teachers recognize what I tell teachers, look, if we can help teachers make these masks, and we do, and then they recognize, wait, there's other people in here who are dealing with some of this stuff. How is that possible? Everyone else in here is so perfect. Everyone else in here is so put together, because all we're seeing is what they're letting us see. And what happens is when we tell them, like, if a student comes to your class and that student is funny, silly, and athletic, if those are the qualities they're showing you in your class, so I'm athletic, so I'm throwing paper in the trash can from across the room, I'm funny, so I'm talking to everybody, making everybody laugh, I'm silly, so I'm like all over the place, those characteristics are going to get this kid in probably some trouble. Mm-hmm. If school is not their focus, if they're not using, like, I'm a studious, I'm study, like, but what about all this that you're not seeing? Because it's based on their outside behavior. You call this kid, he doesn't care about this class, he's trying to destroy my lesson, he doesn't care about his learning. Then you begin to label that student based on this outward behavior, but there's so much that you're missing.
Oh, so much.
So much you're missing. And when we can help teachers begin to say, what is the behavior I'm seeing? I never use it in the terms you use, seen, heard, and validated. What are they letting me see? And what is I'm missing? Because I know I must be missing something. And that's what I realized when I started Ever Forward. I was trying to figure out what I was missing, because I saw smart students failing my class. And it could have easily been where I was like, well, you don't care about your education, so don't care. Go back there and don't care. And I realized, no, it's more than that. There's something I'm missing. I just don't know how to get to it. And I can't get to it in the classroom because I'm here to teach you math. I'm not really here to do this part. So how about I do it at lunchtime? How about we do it over a meal? And that's what I realized, that what I was creating was a space so I could learn from them that couldn't happen in the context of the classroom. And it's been beautiful. It's been, we turned 16 this year coming up. So the next year will be our 16th anniversary.
Amazing.
It's been a beautiful journey. And I'm starting to finally feel like, okay, it's happening, right? All these things. I mean, things that happen along the way, but I have a really high expectation, so I'm never satisfied, right? So I'm always trying to give myself a little credit for something. It's just a journey too.
I will give you a lot of credit. I think you're doing amazing work. I honestly, I'm so inspired by how you're creating something so simple and so powerful that's so easily accessible. That can literally be the key thing to change someone's life.
Thank you. And it's been
how can people find you? What's the best way for people to find you?
They can find us at on social media at Ever Forward Club. So that's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or the website is everforwardclub.org. And on their website, you can go and find the 100,000 Mass Challenge. And if they ever want to reach out to you, our phone numbers are all on those platforms as well.
And we'll have that in the show notes as well, so easy access to those links.
Great. Thank you so much.
Ashanti, thank you so much for your time. I know we crossed paths many years ago, and I really hope that we continue to keep the connection, because I think there's a lot that we can continue to talk about.
Well, I appreciate you very much. And I'm sorry about missing my other appointment. I've been coming around, so I so appreciate it.
Perfect. This was absolutely perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat, visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.